Alrighty, so next thing that is Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, so this is our Lat Lamaki. This is the naughty, loud child who's running around naked in the garden.
Yeah.
This I think
It doesn't get enough attention.
No, it gets a lot of it. Screams for attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was, I didn't see. Yeah, there was a time I didn't see Sauvignon fitting into what we're doing with Thorne and Daughters. But I think what appealed to me about this vineyard was, that sense of adventure of, we have permission to go up the west coast and work with older vineyards of Sauvignon Blanc in the Skurfberg. So this comes from a vineyard called Arbeitsend that's owned by the Finlils. This is where Eben Sadi's Skurfberg Chenin comes from, Chris Arlight's Magnetic North. So Chris had approached me and just said, look, there's some fruit, there's some Sauvignon, if you want to work with it. And I said, look, on paper, Sauvignon didn't really appeal. But I said, look, I'll come and visit the vineyard, taste the wine, and we'll go from there because, I'm curious. And I think having the opportunity to work with the growers up there on the West Coast has been amazing. And I think that's also part of what I wanted to do with Thorne and Daughters was, really explore what's going on in South Africa, through these vineyards. And look, it's challenging. I mean, this, at the top end, this is 4 hours from the cellar. So logistically, it's a lot of work. But there's something very compelling about, the fruit that's being produced from these vineyards. So, yeah, I just can't stop myself. I think there's
so maybe describe the area itself for those who haven't been there, because it's not exactly just around the corner. So
yeah, so I mean, if you go up the N7, you hit Clan William, the dam wall, and you turn left and you go up onto the escarpment there. So you look on one side, you look down about 50, 60 k's to the west coast, to the Atlantic, and so it sort of drops off the plateau. And then on the other side, you've got the Olifantsrivier Valley, and you look back on the Citrusdal Mountain. So it's incredibly beautiful up there. It's very pure and clean. There's almost no vineyard there. There's only 3 vineyards of any significance up there. But I think if you look at the litany of wines that are coming out of that area, I think there's a real acknowledgement there's something special there. I think that Eben's seen, that Chris Arlight's seen, that Rosa with the Rupert's saw. And I mean, Christian, who owns the Christian Finlil, who owns the Arbeits vineyard, he started pulling out, for some Canadian journalist who didn't know where she was, pulling out all the wines that were produced from his vineyard. And she was like, she couldn't believe that, all these wines were coming from this little farm.
From the 48 bush vines in the...
Yeah.
This is amazing.
The yield's incredible. But it's, it's a very challenging area to grow vineyard. It's extremely dry. I think the last 3 years, they haven't had more than 230 mils on Arbeitsend, and that's the wettest of the farms. So, incredibly challenging. And it's crazy for me because the wines that we get out of it kind of belie the climate. It's so hot and dry, but we get these incredibly bright, pure, concentrated wines. And look, Sauvignon for me is, there's a reason that this is one of the world's great grape varietals. It is used or misused a lot to make a lot of very commercial, simplistic wines. But it really does have the potential to produce wines that are textural and complex. So I think my biggest challenge is selling this, because it's kind of Olvine Chenin Blanc drinkers who are going to be into this style and not your average Sauvignon drinker. Yeah. So, I think that's...
And Burgundy drinkers as well.
Yeah. And look, it's something I said to the growers. I said, look, we're going to be going to market with a Sauvignon Blanc that's almost, 360 Rand. And I said, it's quite a niche thing. And, this is not natural Sauvignon Blanc country. This isn't Marlborough where, people are looking for their cloudy bay. But I mean, that said, I think, it's an incredibly interesting terroir, wonderful people to work with. And I think the quality and complexity of the wines that we're getting out of there really says everything, and yeah.
So essentially, you're making this the same way that you're making Cat's Cradle and
so,
a whole bunch of press in the Vaslin press.
So if I go to the the Sauvignon Blanc interest group, I'm doing everything wrong. So yeah, one of the winemakers locally put my wine there, and I was like, how many people liked it? And he said, one or two out of 60. So we do everything wrong as far as the recipe of Sauvignon Blanc goes, but I really like the wine because it's really dialed up intensity, but it still finishes through harmonious and rich and textured.
But balanced. There's no muffin top here. That's not over the top. The structure and the fruits all in. And you say usually there's quite a high alcohol for a white wine. And I'm assuming this is
this usually pushes 14.5.
Yeah.
So
you don't feel it on the palate. I mean, you feel the intensity.
Yeah.
But you don't feel the alcohol because of the intensity.
Yeah.
And it's obviously small berries, thick skins. I'm assuming.
Yeah. And just off the charts concentration.
And it has this sort of lovely, again, sage and fennel, but also the blackcurrant leaf, that sort of edge of Sauvignon, that sort of surprise, the riper edge of Sauvignon Blanc, with a bit of sort of winter melon there as well, and that cantaloupe, that sweet cantaloupe skin character.
Yeah.
In terms of aging, what are you old oak or you said
Older, small
the
oak.
stocking that goes into the Chardonnay, not to the Sauvignon. Okay, right. Do you think this could, because it is such a rich, intense wine, could handle a little bit of new oak just to settle it down a little bit, or?
Play around with that. Yeah.
Because it reminds me in texture, not only of the paper cut in terms of the intensity of it. It has this sort of like
and I think
fior de latte
just
sort of
tasting
creaminess to it and opulence to it.
Yeah, and just tasting the grapes in the vineyard, it's on that same spectrum,
How do you eliminate the herbaceous notes from the Sauvignon Blanc? I don't see any here.
Of the classic Sauvignon flavors, or
The herbaceous notes, like
herbaceous, yeah.
you don't find any. How do you take that away from it?
Look, it's also why we ripen it a lot. Look, the acidities we get on this vineyard are intense. So I try to pick it at about 13.5 in 2020, and it was the acidity was too intense, and it was still green. So especially on the Arbeits end block, there is a vigorous part which is still green and can be quite herbaceous. So we really push the ripeness just to get through that. But it's dryland bush vines, so you have a good sun exposure on the bunches. So you have less of that intense green pepper and that real greenness to it. But it is there, naturally. And if we were to pick this much earlier, it would be more pronounced. But I think it comes, Dave said the blackcurrant leaf, it tends to express a bit more like that than green pepper
and basil as well, and sage and that sort of
sweeter herbs. Yeah.
Sweeter herbs rather than the sort of astringent asparagus sort of characters. Yeah. There's certainly sort of like I would call it, but I'm from a different part of the world. I would call it like a barley sugar. It was little hard yellow lollies that I'm not sure what you call them here. There's that sort of character to it, almost like a maltiness to it, like a sweet maltiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But John Plateau, when he tasted with us a few years back, him and Erica were out, and he picked it. He said on all the wines. I think it's also like the way we sulfuring up pretty late and oxidizing the juice, that you do get a lot of sweet floral kind of upfront.
Do you do natural fermentation of this?
Yeah.
Everything?
Yeah, everything. So that's literally just basket pressed, naturally settled, and natural ferment to let it oxidize. And that won't see sulfur until August, September.
It just keeps on going on the palate as well. It's so long, this one.
And that's the intensity of the 22s and the 23s are just, wow, it's a special part of the world.
Did they get rain in January this year or not?
A little bit.
Yeah, okay.
It kind of just enough to take us over the finish line.
Yeah, right. Okay.
It was, by the end of December, it was looking very dicey.
Pretty. Yeah. Okay. Awesome.